Hi everyone, my name is Matthew Couto and I'm the Communications Coordinator at TechSoup Canada. And I'd like to welcome and thank you all for joining us for today's webinar on how nonprofits can make the most of AdWords and the Google Ad Grant. But just before we get started, I'd like to quickly introduce you to TechSoup Canada. So our mission here at TechSoup Canada is to help nonprofits use technology effectively, and we accomplish this in two ways. The first is to make technology products more affordable through our technology donations program. We partner with corporations such as Microsoft, Adobe, and Symantec, and we offer their products as either an outright donation or at a significant discount for charities, nonprofits, and libraries across Canada. For example, if you wanted a copy of Microsoft Office Professional, you can expect to purchase it for around $500 online or in store. However, if you're a member of TechSoup Canada and you qualify for a Microsoft donations program, you can get Office Pro for only $55. As you can imagine, the cost savings can become quite significant, especially if you're purchasing software for your entire staff team. Creating a TechSoup Canada account is free, so if you'd like to get more information, please visit our website at techsoupcanada.ca. The second way we try to help nonprofits use technology effectively is by creating and curating nonprofit tech resources. We write blogs, we curate content on social media, and we host events and webinars like this one to help nonprofits learn more about the technologies that can help them in their day-to-day work. So if there's ever a topic that you'd like to learn more about, please do let us know. We're always very delighted to get feedback from our members about what topics are important to them, so don't hesitate to reach out. Now, just a few logistics before we get started. For today's webinar, you can use the GoToWebinar panel on your right-hand side to change your audio settings, enter any questions you have, or just chat with us in general. At the end of this webinar presentation, we're going to have a formal Q&A session where I will ask questions to the speaker on your behalf. So just a reminder, you are going to be on mute during this presentation, so if you do have any questions or concerns, please feel free to chat to us in the question box. And also note that this webinar is going to be recorded, and we are going to upload the video on our website and YouTube channel shortly. And just before we begin, I'm going to ask the audience a few questions, and we're going to launch a couple of polls. Now, the first questions that I want just to get a sense of where you're at with Google AdWords is I'm going to ask, do you or your organization have a Google Ad Grant? So you can vote now in the poll. Nice. I'm seeing just under a third of you do have one, but the majority don't. So that's perfect. Really what we're seeing is that the vast majority of the audience here today don't have a Google Ad Grant, and this is perfect because you're going to get a really great introduction to the whole process. Now we're going to ask a second poll. What is your level of knowledge or experience with Google AdWords? And I know this applies more to those who have the grant, but please do fire in your answers. Beautiful. So it's similar numbers. We're seeing that the vast majority are not familiar because, of course, you don't have the Google Ad Grant. So that's great. So we have about a third who are familiar, 2/3 who are not, and that's perfect. And our speaker is going to really appreciate that information. So thank you. And now, with further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. So Brady Josephson is a nonprofit strategist, marketer, professor, and writer. He founded Shift Philanthropy, Inc. as part of his mission to see more people giving to more causes. And through Shift Philanthropy, Brady operates a charity marketing agency, Shift Charity, and an online advertising agency for nonprofits called the Nonprofit Supply Co. And it's through Nonprofit Supply Co. that he helps nonprofits make the most of Google AdWords and the Google Ad Grant. Brady is also an adjunct professor at North Park University School of Business and Nonprofit Management. He regularly contributes to the Huffington Post and manages his own blog, recharity.ca. So we're really, really delighted to have Brady with us today to learn more about Google Ad Grant and how we can take advantage of this program. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the presentation over to Brady.
Awesome. Thank you, Matthew. And thanks, everyone, for coming today and filling out those answers on the polls. The good thing about today is I'm not, a Google AdWords super nerd. Over the last few years, I've become more and more and more familiar and have seen the value, and that's what we'll talk about today. But hopefully there are terms, and I'll explain it in a way that will make sense and will allow us to kind of go deeper as we go. So before we get into too many things, I want to start with a quick story. We just had the World Series. The Cubs broke their 100-plus year drought. I actually went to school in Chicago, on the north side of Chicago, and I don't like the Cubs, actually, but it was fun to see the 5 million people and friends and family all, weep over the fact that the Cubs won the World Series. But I actually played baseball in college, and the first year I was there, we went 1-39. So 1 win and 39 losses. Now, to lose 39 out of 40 baseball games, you have to be both very bad and very unlucky, both of which we were. And then that coach left for many reasons, and we got a new coach, and he was a lot better, and the program started turning around, but we still weren't very good. So we found ourselves playing from behind all the time. And one of the strategies or tactics that this new coach drilled into us, and I remember it very vividly because, again, we were behind all the time, is that when you're playing from behind, you have to get the tying run to the plate. So if you're down 3 runs, your goal as a team is just to try to get 2 people on base. Because if you can get 2 people on base from a single or a walk, or you get hit by a pitch, it doesn't matter how you get on base. But if you have 2 people on base, then the guy at the plate with 1 swing can get lucky, hit a home run, and all of a sudden the game is tied, and you give yourself a chance to win. So when you're playing from behind, all you're trying to do is get the tying run to the plate. I think that's a good metaphor or analogy for marketing, particularly search marketing for causes and nonprofits and charities, is that because of lack of budget and infrastructure and an upside-down donor funnel that we'll talk about, we're kind of playing from behind. And what we should be trying to do is, especially when it comes to online marketing and fundraising, we're just trying to give ourselves a chance, right? We just need to get more donors to visit a site and landing page so that they can interact with our story, see our content, see our impact, see the difference we're making. But if they never get to the site, then we're not giving ourselves a chance. So I want you to keep that in mind. You have to get the tying run to the plate. Or a different way to think about it is this: if a nonprofit website exists and no one ever visits it, is it really any good? And this has been a bit of my experience over the last 10-plus years working in the nonprofit sector, both in the United States and Canada, and teaching and writing and consulting and technology and all this other stuff, primarily small and medium-sized nonprofits, is that there's a big struggle in terms of getting more people to websites. Now, of course, we should be focusing on, are they the right people? Is it the right type of traffic? But there's also a volume problem of there's just not enough people interacting with our website's content and story. And so that's kind of what we try to do at Shift, and then that's why we started Nonprofit Supply Co., is because the Google Ad Grant that we'll talk about more, we found it to be really useful in helping solve that problem. So here's a little bit of a fundraising framework as we get into it, just to put the value of traffic in context of overall fundraising, is that these 3 things: earn attention, increase motivation, and reduce friction. This is our online fundraising framework, but it really applies to any form of fundraising, whether you're events or direct mail. First, someone has to be aware, or you need their attention to engage with content. Then they need to be motivated to give or to sign up to get an email or to volunteer. And then the action, or there needs to be a reduction of friction. It needs to be easy and simple. And all 3 of these categories are equally weighted. So if you have a ton of attention but little motivation, and it's really easy to go through the flow or the sign-up, you can still get a lot of donations or email sign-ups. If you don't have a lot of attention but people are hugely motivated because they're really aligned with your values, then you can also get a lot of results. And if the friction is really smooth and easy and you get medium attention and motivation, then it can also work. So these 3 variables are kind of intertwined when it comes to fundraising. And again, what we're talking about today primarily is this first one, is how do you get more people to engage with you and your work primarily on your website? Because traffic does equal revenue. Now, it's not 100% correlated, But here's a client of ours, and this is their traffic and revenue chart over a 6-month period, 5-month period. And you'll see as traffic goes up, revenue generally goes up. And it's because these three variables, earn attention, increase motivation, and reduce friction in the world of online fundraising, loosely equate to these things: traffic times average gift times conversion rate. And those three variables multiplied together equals revenue. Here's a chart that shows that to be true and what happens if, again, how these three variables are equally weighted. So if you get more traffic, but the conversion rate, or the number of people who donate compared to who visit your site, stays the same, and the average gift stays the same, you'll raise more money. So if you get a bump in any one of these three areas, you should, in theory, raise more money. And obviously the goal is to try to get an increase in all three of these areas. But just by increasing your traffic alone, in theory, you should be able to raise more money. The nice thing about the Google Ad Grant and websites is that it's not just about revenue, right? There's social service organizations where you're trying to find more people to serve food to, or to have beds to, or there's counseling services. There's a whole bunch of people that are looking for services online that don't relate to just donations. And in fact, a wise strategy is to think about content and capturing emails and volunteer opportunities, because it's more natural for people to actually look for those as opposed to look to donate. So here's a chart again where the red line is traffic going up over time, and the blue line is goal completion. So this is email signups and volunteer inquiries and contact us forms. And again, it's not 100% correlated, but when traffic goes up, more people visit the site, more actions get completed in the form of donations and emails and signups. So it should equal revenue, but it should also equal more than revenue, which is fantastic. So then the question is, how do you drive more traffic to your website? And that's what we're here to talk about today, is this Google Ad Grants and AdWords for nonprofits. Again, this is why we started Nonprofit Supply Co. just in the summer, is because we've seen our clients either didn't have a grant, like many of you don't, or those that did on average spent $330, which comes from search engine people, which is about 3% of what you can spend every month. So Google will give you up to $10,000 of free search advertising every single month, and most causes don't have it or are not taking advantage of it. And so on the right there, we've been able to average about 5,000 over the past 6 months for our clients, which then turns into visits, which turns into emails and donations. And over the past 6 months in total for Nonprofit Supply Co., this is what we've been able to do, is spend $370,000, which means 240,000 people visited sites, and over 9.5 million people saw these ads. In the end, it was an increase of 151% in traffic. It was also led to 1,000 donations and emails and signups. And what we're going to talk about today is our experience in kind of this model that's still in progress and developing, but something that we think hopefully you can take and use, or we can partner with you on it. But here's some of the lessons and how to get the grant and how to set it up based on kind of our experience working specifically with nonprofits and charities. So a few caveats and details. We generally work with small and medium nonprofits, so budget is always an issue. So our focus is really 80-20, or that Pareto principle, where we're trying to spend 20% of our time to get 80% of the results. So we don't necessarily go all the way down into like the super nerdery of AdWords, because there's just not enough time and money to do it. Today we'll definitely introduce AdWords, and we'll maybe go one level deeper in terms of some tactics or techniques with keywords, but by no means is this going to be super comprehensive or very in-depth, because I don't think that's where you're at, and it's also not where I'm at. Again, I'm a quote-unquote expert, but I have tons to learn. The slides will be sent out. You can email me at Shift Charity, Brady at Shift Charity, and my Twitter handle's at Brady Josephson. And then today we're going to go over search marketing, how to get the grant, how to set it up, and putting it to work. So search marketing in a search world. If you're like me, you're constantly Googling things. One of my favorite things to do the night after going out with friends or having dinner is to actually look at my search history and kind of piece back together the night. And sometimes it's quite random and quite funny. But we use search all the time to find information. Google is processing 40,000 search queries a second. We're up to over 1.3 trillion searches per year worldwide now. We live in a search world. It's how we find and access information. It's also a weird search world, so this cartoonist put together a few weird searches, and I wanted to share them with you because they're funny. Squirrels are the devil's oven mitts. I'm not sure why someone's searching that. Tomorrow I will scald myself with tea. My favorite part about this one is that it's tomorrow. It's not today, but they're pre-planning to scald themselves with tea, which makes no sense to me. And then I think this is my favorite. Never put jam on a magnet. Everybody knows that. I don't know why you need to search that. The point here is we live in a weird search world, and we use search for everything. It's also a search world that's dominated by Google. So their market share is somewhere between 90 and 95% in terms of search volume and traffic. And so part of the reason why we're talking about Google today is because they have the AdWords program. But if you were going to invest in a search marketing strategy, Google's absolutely the place to be based on pure volume and user behavior. No one says, let's Yahoo that or let's Bing it, or very few people do. So in the world of search marketing, you can kind of break it down into these two buckets. On the one side, you have SEO, or search engine optimization. This is organic, and this is what you earn. We'll talk a bit more about this. And then on the other side, you've got PPC, or pay-per-click, and this is where you just straight up buy it. These are kind of the two prongs of search marketing in terms of how organizations and businesses find customers and donors through SEO, organic, or pay-per-click buy it. So search marketing, SEO, we won't dive too much into this, but it's useful to talk about. Again, this is where your content, your blogs, your PDFs, your website, engagement, social media, these things all play a factor into how Google ranks your website based on certain search terms. So what you can do, you can write more content, you can use specific words that can show up more frequently that are meaningful to you and your site. You can have more people link to your site, which builds authority, and you can maintain an active presence on social media. More and more SEO is based on engagement now, so the more that there's social activity and sharing, the better and better sites rank, as opposed to just using the same keyword over and over and over again. But that's a little bit on SEO. PPC, this is where you create ads on certain keywords, so when people search something, an ad shows up. We'll talk about quality score, but that's really what determines how ads are shown. And these ads point people to where you want them to go. So there's a lot more control in this environment, and what you can really do is basically buy them, pay more, or be more relevant. So think about it this way: SEO is earned, PPC is bought. SEO is organic, and PPC is paid. A couple of positives of SEO is that it costs, quote unquote, nothing. And it can live on forever and ever. So really good or evergreen content can live on a site and generate lots of traffic and engagement, and you don't have to pay anything, which is fantastic. I put costs nothing in brackets because, as you know, producing content and stories does take time and it does cost in terms of effort. Some of the bad stuff, it's really difficult to guarantee or control. If Google changed their algorithm, then your strategy may change. Creating content can be very expensive, and SEO can be quite laborious, and it is highly competitive. Good and bad, pay-per-click. The good is that, again, you get way more control. It doesn't actually take a lot of time to set up, but it can be very costly. It is a little complicated, and it's also highly competitive. So that's kind of search marketing, SEO, PPC in a nutshell. And why, again, search marketing is important for causes, besides the fact that traffic equals revenue, and it can also equal more than revenue, is it's just a huge generator of traffic. So these are just 4 sample clients. But you'll see organic search, that's at SEO, and paid search, that's the Google Ad Grant or PPC. And it's the #1 or #2 or #3 source in almost every client that we've ever worked with, and generates somewhere between 50 to 80% of traffic to a website. So this search marketing isn't just for big business or something like that. This is how people are generally finding your website, especially early on in the donor experience or the donor journey. This is what a pay-per-click strategy looks like. So in this example of a client of ours, volunteer in Vancouver, and our client and their ad shows up third here. Excuse me. So the YWCA, World Vision, boom, then our client, which is not nearly as big as those 2 other organizations. And this is what an SEO strategy without the Google Ad Grant looks like. it doesn't show up. You don't see it in the top positions on the page. And oh, by the way, this is page 10 on Google when you put in volunteer in Vancouver. So we not only in the PPC, we showed up in the 3rd position, and in the SEO alone without that, we're not even in the first 10 pages. And this is basically how people use Google, right? First page, this is a legitimate search. 2 to 3, it's got to be here somewhere. You start going into 4, 5, 6, 7, you're desperate, and beyond 7, God help you, what are you still doing here? Right, so this is part of the challenge, but part of the opportunity is that a Google Ad Grant can help overcome some of those SEO challenges with this free pay-per-click strategy, thus the Google Grant. So we're going to walk through the steps in terms of how to get it. It's fairly simple, but there's a few quirks to it. But this is how you can get started. So Google has done actually really good job. In the last 6 months, they've invested quite a bit of time and effort to kind of revamping the Google Ad Grant program. So it's better explained. There's more support. It's a lot easier to go through. So even if you just go to that site, or you can Google Google Ad Grant, you'll find the link and it'll kind of walk you through it. Just a couple of key points to note here, and it'll make more sense when we explain AdWords. But you can get up to $10,000 of free advertising every single month, but it's restricted to search only, so you can't do visual or images or things like that. They'll only appear on Google, obviously, and they cap your bid or your cost per click at $2. We'll circle back to why that's important, but it is a restriction, and it is a little bit of causes a strategic challenge in terms of using the ad grant. But those are a few things to remember as we get going. Google will walk you through the steps on how to apply eligibility and enrollment. It's pretty straightforward. The first thing is if you're eligible. So to note here, government entities, hospital or health, and education typically are not eligible for the Google for Nonprofits and Google Ad Grant program. There can be some exceptions, so the philanthropic arm of education, so like the foundation tied to a university can apply and will make sense or will be able to get it. Potentially the foundation of a health or hospital as well, but the actual school or the actual hospital will not. You must be registered with TechSoup to enroll in the Google Ad Grant program, so it's a great service. Another reason to get a TechSoup account if you do not have one. You're going to have to get it to apply. And then the neat thing here is that the Google Ad Grant program in Canada applies to not just registered charities, but also nonprofits. So a lot of associations and societies can actually take advantage of the Google Ad Grant as well, which is pretty unique. A lot of these programs are restricted to registered charities, but this one is not. So most organizations, charities and nonprofits, will be eligible. So there's a good chance if you don't have one, you can get one. The actual application is fairly straightforward. Again, you're going to have to register with TechSoup, and you get this little token, and then you'll input the token as you go through the application steps and then certify that you meet a few pretty basic criteria. And one key note, this sounds like such a simple thing, but make sure you're in incognito mode or completely logged out of all your other Gmail or Google accounts when you're applying. So your nonprofit account will need to be linked with a Google account only, and you're going to need to create an AdWords account, which will either be the same or a new Google account. And then if you're like me, you already have 2 or 3 other Google accounts. And so if you don't go in incognito mode, it may switch you in and out of the accounts. And if you create your account in the wrong one, you're going to have to redo it all over again. So it sounds like a simple thing, but when you go through the application steps, make sure that you are in incognito mode. It will save you a lot of pain later on. So a little tip there. So once you get accepted in the program, then you got to enroll into Google Ad Grants. And there's these 2 options. They have AdWords Express, which sounds really good, limited time, don't really know what you're doing. Yeah, that sounds great. But you really want the full-fledged Ad Grants option. And that's because AdWords Express is really focused on small businesses and kind of geographic targeting. So if I have a mom and pop tire shop and I want to run a few ads, AdWords Express is great. You can set it up really easily. It'll optimize for you and be geographic. but it doesn't apply as well for nonprofits, and part of it is because their algorithms and setup isn't based on a $2 cost per click, and they don't understand, again, as a machine, the nuances of nonprofit. So it sounds good, but we strongly recommend that you sign up for the full ad grant program. You don't have to use all the bells and whistles, but you want that option at least for a little bit more control. So then once you get started, it'll walk you through, again, there's great resources for this, and as long as you follow this structure, what they tell you to do, like has to be in US dollar, only search network, manually set bid clicks, choose $2 or less, set the budget $329 or less, don't input your billing information. It'll tell you these things, and please listen to them as they go. Follow the account creation guide exactly. We've done, dozens of these now, and the two problems are that people don't go in incognito mode and they don't follow the account creation guide. If you do both of those things, you can get through it. It's fairly straightforward, so be sure to follow that account creation guide. And then there is something called Google Ad Grantspro, and now this is where you can get up to $40,000 per month instead of the $10,000 if you meet certain criteria. So you have to spend a lot, so you have to spend over $9,900 in 2 of the past 6 months. You have to track a conversion or show that people are donating or signing up for email, and have a click-through rate of 1% or above. We'll talk about some of that moving forward. Right now, they've paused this, so we've applied for some of our clients, and they said they're not accepting anyone into this program for now. They will open it up in the future, but right now it's paused. And it won't apply to all organizations, but if you have a lot of content, it can help take you from, say, this example, where this is the client with the Google Ad Grant in this window, and then once they had Grants Pro, this is kind of what it looked like. And so went from generating, 7,000 visitors a month up to 25,000 or 20,000 visitors a month through this Google Grants Pro. So it's one of the things that we try to do for our clients, is put them in a position to get Google Grants Pro. But again, today we'll focus more on just kind of the basics and getting started. So AdWords overview. Now bear with me. This will be hopefully not too complicated, but we're going to try to explain how AdWords works in a simple way so that the strategies will make some more sense. So a quick glossary summation here. So campaign, it's the highest level in the AdWords. It's like a theme. You have an ad group, which then feeds into the ads. I'll show you this in a chart and what this actually means. Click, straightforward. Spend is how much actually gets spent in a day, a week, or a month. Cost per click, so this is the average amount that you bid to get someone to click on your ad, and this is the thing that's limited to $2 for an ad grant. A bid, this is the thing that's $2. Impression is just how many people see your ad. Click-through rate is a really important metric to monitor, and it's the ratio of people who click an ad compared to how many people see your ad. It's a huge lever in quality score, which we'll talk about in a second. A goal, so in analytics, this is a measurement of an action someone can take, so an email sign-up or a donation. A conversion is the same thing, except it's tied to, say, your advertisement. So a conversion will show you how many people signed up for email from an ad. And this, again, it's a requirement for Google Grants Pro. Still with me? Hopefully, again, there'll be time for questions afterwards, and we can unpack it a bit. So here's that structure where you have campaigns, which are have a bunch of ad groups, which then have ads tied to them. The campaign is really key. It's like a theme. It kind of what keeps your account coordinated and set up. We'll talk about some strategies for nonprofits on campaigns. The ad group, again, is really what ties in keywords, and the ad is the thing that people actually see and click on. It kind of breaks down. It looks something like this. You can have a volunteer campaign with volunteer keywords, which then have volunteer ads, which will point to a volunteer page. Same thing for fundraising or news and events or branded. However you set up your campaigns, they're kind of like themes, which then break down. And then here's keywords. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but keywords is really kind of the crux of how people see your ads and the content that they click on. So these are the types of terms that people actually search or put into Google, which will trigger your ad. So there's a bunch of different types of keywords. There's a broad match, which basically shows anything, variations, misspelling. It's the broadest of all. It'll kind of capture everything. Then you've got a broad match modifier, so that will only include slight variations of that one keyword. Then you've got phrase match, so this is when you put it in quotes. This will look for the exact phrase or close variation of that phrase. So in our example, volunteer in Vancouver. Exact match, this is in closed brackets, so that's if your ad will only show if people search that exact term. And then negative match. So in this case, I put Tennessee Volunteers, which is a football team in the States. If someone's searching that, they're probably not looking for a volunteer opportunity in Vancouver. Or for one example, we ran a campaign on Justin Trudeau, and we had a ton of search traffic coming from cabinet, but it was people looking for actual cabinets as opposed to the people in Justin Trudeau's cabinet. So then we added it as a negative match because clearly people aren't looking for wooden cabinetry on our site talking about Justin Trudeau's cabinet. So that's how negative matches work. Generally, we'll start with broad match until we can maximize spend and learn more, and then we'll start using these other types of keywords to kind of hone in and optimize as we go. So the end result is something like this, where you have a campaign that has a bunch of keywords in an ad group which point to ads, which then point to a landing page. It's key to know that the landing page here has a huge impact on how ads show up and then the success of your ads as well. We're not going to talk a ton about kind of landing page composition and best practice, but those things, the ad and the landing page and the keyword, all three of those variables work with one another to not just show your ad, but then also have donor engagement and help people sign up and make donations. So how do ads show, when, and why? We get asked this all the time. And the real answer is no one 100% knows. You know, it's like a Google secret. But this is as best as we can kind of describe it, is it has this relevance factor, which again is your keyword, your ad, and your page, combined with this user experience. So it actually monitors if people are just visiting the page and leaving right away, or how engaged people are. And then this equals this kind of mythic quality score. And quality score is what really allows your ad to show up. And it's created through click-through rate, so that's kind of an engagement rate. The relevance, again, is the keyword relevant to the page in your ad, as well as the landing page. And then your historical performance. So if you've been kind of a low performer in the past, Google will actually penalize you for that. Even though your ad may be really good and your landing page really good. Key point here is that quality is really, really important, particularly when we get into nonprofits and some bid restrictions. Having a really relevant ad is really important to make sure that your ad shows up. So that's kind of AdWords 101 really quick. Now we'll get into how you can kind of set it up and put it to work. A few kind of unique things to Ad Grants here that we've kind of mentioned in the past, but I just want to go over again. So because you can only bid $2 and say charity donation, there's going to be huge organizations that are bidding well more than $10 for that type of keyword, for example. The only way for you to show up is if you're way more relevant than they are, because your bid is going to be so low in Google Ad Grant. So there will be some keywords that you just will never show up for because you can't bid enough. But the strategy always leans towards relevance first and then volume second, and we'll talk about why just sheer volume is a good strategy. But the need for relevance is really important because of that bid restriction. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. The other thing is the donor funnel. This is how we often view the donor funnel, right? Leads turn into prospects, which turn into donors, and they kind of fall through this classic sales funnel. The reality is the donor funnel is pretty much upside down, right? No one really wakes up in the morning and says, I really want to give some money away today, right? And then we see that in their search history. So something like donate to charity, right, which is kind of where everyone goes or wants to go. Using Google's keyword planner, you can see that very few people actually search for that. The competition's really high. And here's that suggested bid. They're saying for you to show up, you probably need to bid $10 plus, which means it won't really work for the Google Ad Grant. But the key thing is here, very few people are searching for that compared to something like Kim Kardashian, which has 60,000 plus average monthly searches. Competition is low and the suggested bid is low, so if you can somehow figure out some advertising strategy with Kim Kardashian, although you maybe don't want to do that, there could be opportunity for your search marketing. The point here is that people don't wake up naturally searching for donations, so now potentially they look for ways to get involved, they look for content and stories and volunteer opportunities, and that's where we spend a lot more of our focus on the ads because it's what people are looking for. So we'll always run ads and campaigns on donations. It's just not going to be the best way to maximize your $10,000 because it's just not what people are really looking for because that donor funnel is a bit upside down. So a couple key strategies. The first one is just spend, learn, and repeat. And we'll talk about this with run, review, revisit, which is basically the same kind of thing. But because you're not actually paying for this $10,000 every month, some of the rules about optimization in AdWords don't really apply. So if there's a low-performing ad or low-performing keyword, if you were paying for that, you would absolutely want to get rid of it because you don't want to pay for poor ads or poor quality. In this case, you kind of don't care as much. As long as it doesn't negatively impact your overall account standing, you can spend a bit on a weird keyword or have a less than ideal ad because it's until you're spending $10,000 every month, it's not really damaging to you or your account. Again, as long as you keep that quality score and click-through rate high. And the advantage is you can learn faster of what people are actually searching and what they're actually clicking. So this is another kind of counterintuitive or common mistake that if people use agencies or professional AdWords folks, they'll do a lot of research to try to find out what's best and run a few ads and campaigns. And it's good strategy, again, if it's what you have a budget. But on our end of things, we'd very much rather like throw it to the people and let the people decide, right? It's election day today, so we'll find out what the American people say. But throw it to the people and let's see what they actually search for. Let's see what they actually click on. And then we can change strategies from that. So using the spending or this kind of quote-unquote free money to your advantage is actually a key strategy for using the ad grant as you get it and start using it. Try to get smaller engagements, again, not just donations. So we focus a lot on ways to capture emails, but volunteer opportunities are fantastic. Contact us forms, and then if you get more into service provision, phoning someone or requesting a demo or a meet, something like that. These are all things that make a bit more sense in terms of actions or conversions from what people are looking for. So having a bit more focus on primarily emails. Again, if your goal is online revenue, emails is kind of the lifeblood still of online fundraising programs. Consider using pop-ups. Now, this is maybe a bigger conversation, and some people love them, some people hate them. I'm personally a fan of pop-ups if they're done right. That's where, this is an example where this pop-up only comes up if someone's about to leave the website. This comes up on a client site and says, hey, do you want to get emails? The reason why I like this, if done right, is because no one, again, is searching to sign up for another email. And most of our email signups are buried in the footers of our websites or kind of hard to find. And so people will come to a website with interest and a little motivation, but not quite ready to make a donation. And there's not a lot there for them, right? So if they come to a page and they're learning more about services, they're not naturally going to donate or seek out in the bottom of the footer this way to sign up for email. So a pop-up, if it's done right, can say, hey, is this something that you want to do that's easier to find? And they can say yes. And we've seen quite a bit of success with pop-ups. And you can set them to be super annoying or not very annoying. We try to be on the not very annoying side. But the concept of pop-ups is a good one. And this is another one. It's called a scroll box. So we put it on news sites, and if people scroll down so they're actually reading or engaged, then this thing will kind of, excuse me, pop up in the bottom right corner saying, hey, do you want to get more news and stories like this? But again, it's turning that traffic into content that they want and then allows for that action that you kind of want, and hopefully they're interested in as well, to happen without pointing them to a totally different page or asking them to make a significant commitment in the form of a donation or something like that. So consider pop-ups. And then own your brand. So a branded, or we call it a branded campaign, is one of the 6 campaigns that we always try to create. And that's again because sometimes if people search your actual organization name, you may not even be the first one that shows up. Now, hopefully you are, but if you're in an affiliation model or you have a name that has a lot of common names like Hope, there's a lot of different Hope type organizations out there, and so you may not actually be the first thing that people are actually looking for. And so if all you do is get the Google Ad Grant and make sure that people who are looking for you are able to find you quicker and easier, that's a great thing. And again, it doesn't cost you anything, quote unquote, to do this type of strategy. So that's a great starting point, is own your own brand. So these are the 5 steps here: goals and metrics, campaign structure, keywords, those ad groups, ads and landing pages, how they're woven together. Goals and metrics, what are you trying to accomplish here with the ad grant? Is it donors? If so, measure it through, say, emails or new donors, and then to set up the proper tracking, how do you get that goal or conversion kind of on your website? We like to set goals that are like big and aspirational, and then the objectives are really measurable, and then the tracking is, this is how we know. But go into this with that idea. Is it more email signups? Is it more volunteers? What's your main goal here? This is a little advanced, but if you can connect your analytics and your AdWords, and particularly using something like e-commerce, you can log into one site and see how many donations are coming from which ads and traffic sources and value. The nice thing, again, about Google's ecosystem is that it's all connected. So it's fairly easy to actually connect, and then you can start, and this is where that learning comes in, you can see, oh, this search term leads to more email signups than this one does. Let's create more ads, or let's focus more on those search terms. So if you can connect the tracking properly, there's some great insights. This campaign structure, here are those 6 campaigns that we kind of by default like to set up. That branded one, which is really about you. Donate, we'll always have it. News and stories, kind of a blog or content, is great. Your programs or learn more is a good one, and then get involved, volunteer. And then if you have any campaigns, a year-end or a spring, that can kind of be its own campaign as well. A good rule of thumb here for campaign structure, if you're wondering, is it loosely kind of equates to your headings on your website. So this is an example of a client we're onboarding right now, and their campaigns can kind of correlate. So about is that branded one, concert and events, music, donate, outreach, blog. Those are kind of those 6 areas, and so that's one of the rule of thumbs. Is a campaign can kind of fit the navigation of your website. Try to keep them fewer and simpler at the start. We've done this the wrong way, where we've had tons of campaigns and it gets really difficult to manage. So try with a fewer campaigns. I already mentioned this, but we start with more keywords and broader match, and then as we learn, we'll kind of trim from there. When you get into your kind of branded or get involved or donate, that's where using more specific phrases will help, because they're really expensive and competitive. So instead of volunteer in Vancouver, which is our example, you could go volunteer in Vancouver downtown east side as a phrase match, because now that's more unique and we have a better chance of being more relevant and standing out. So if you start big and broad for kind of content and stories, that's fine. But for you and donations in particular, using phrase or exact match is a better strategy to help there. Use Google. They have free tools like keywords research. They'll suggest keywords for you. They have that planner where you can type in a landing page or a term, and they'll show you search volumes or suggestions. They have a lot of tools. It can be a little overwhelming, but they do have some free tools. They want you to use this tool. They want you to spend that free money. So take advantage of some of those. And then the ad group can look something like this. So under your campaign of news and stories, you can kind of break it down into, say, content types, so blogs and annual report, newsletter, stories, or maybe it's a bit more focused. So these are stories about Vancouver, Africa, South America, Canada. The ad group is just kind of a sub-theme. You're just trying to relate keywords here. So again, for us, we kind of broke it down into like Christian faith or Justin Trudeau and these kind of sub-themes of content. For the ad itself, they're pretty straightforward. There are character restrictions, but you always want to capitalize each word in the title, and you want to show value, kind of have a short offer, like why should someone click on this, and use punctuation. And then point to a landing page, again, that's hopefully pretty clean and simple. It's focused on one thing, one ad, one page, one action. That's hopefully where you're pointing people. We won't go into this too much, but this is a different form of that attention, motivation, friction. It's just more nerdy. This is a conversion heuristic of saying why people take actions, whether it's an email or a donation. And it's just motivation and incentive and value proposition are on the left here, and then friction and anxiety. But it's a way to think about landing pages is, are you providing motivation? Is it clear what you're offering? Are there incentives? How do you reduce the friction, and how do you address anxiety? So for donations, anxiety are things like percentage spent on programs or overhead, which is bullcrap, but a different conversation. Do you have any seals? Are you a member of certain associations? Donor testimonials? You want to address these 5 different factors when you're creating a landing page. And then run, review, revisit. We've talked about that being kind of the spend, learn situation, but we think you need about a month to get the data that you need. And then again, because we're focused on the 20/80, if you just kind of make changes once a month, you'll be fine. And if you make major changes once a quarter, you'll be all right. Again, you're not going to, crush it and, optimize all the time, but I think that's kind of the minimal effort where you can still get something out of the Google Ad Grant. Be sure to review if you can, right? So this is where, what are the good keywords, the good ads, the good ad groups, which will help you make changes, but it also should feed into your other fundraising, and I'll show you an example. So then once you kind of revisit the data, you can remove the bad stuff, add more of the good stuff, and then that piece incorporate lessons into other areas. So for us, when we looked at this First United client, we saw, man, we get a lot of clicks on volunteer. These keywords, Vancouver volunteer and volunteer Vancouver, these are keywords, and then they also exist in these high-performing ads. So then we actually changed the title of this page. It used to be just volunteer, but now we put volunteer in Vancouver, and then we put that keyword in the page itself, and then hopefully this call to action and form are kind of easy to fill out. But that's an example of learning from what people are actually searching for to not just improve the landing page, but also speak more directly to what people are actually searching for. So you can take learning from ads and put them into the rest of your fundraising. Like this is a test we're running right now where we're trying to say Vancouver needs you versus just kind of homeless or help Vancouver. And then we'll put it into our monthly donate page if it works, or we'll try to figure out if it doesn't. But again, you can run tests because the volume in search is so great that it can provide insights into, say, like emails or landing pages in other parts of your fundraising. So I think that's kind of a hidden gem of the Google Ad Grant, at least for us, and maybe that's just because we're kind of nerdy about this stuff. But what we can learn from what people are searching for is really important, because we'll often talk in our own language, and through Google and this Ad Grant we can actually see what our donors' language is, which is really important. So all that summarized in one slide, you have to get people's attention, earned or paid, before they can really engage with you. Search marketing can be hugely powerful in doing this and getting visits to your site. The free Ad Grant allows charities and nonprofits to better compete in the search world. The landing page and completion page all work together with the ads to drive value and show ROI. Remember that the donor funnel is a bit upside down, so you need to focus on how you can pull donors up with their search terms and engagement and those smaller actions. Setting up some solid campaigns with clean structure in the early days will make it easier to manage and learn. And spend away so you can learn through the run, review, revisit process. Don't worry in the early days as much about, is this a great ad or a good keyword? Focus on that $10,000 in volume so that you can learn. And if you can, run some tests and take these learnings from AdWords into other areas of your online fundraising. So hopefully you can use these types of strategies, get the Ad Grant, happy to talk more, and get that time run to the plate or get those people to visit your site. And good luck. I think, we're happy to talk Nonprofit Supply Co. as well. We charge anywhere from $200 to $400 and $200 for application if you want some help. We're giving away a free month for anyone on this webinar if they want to work with us now or moving forward. And I think we'll have some time for some questions.
Absolutely, that's right. So we're just going to dive into them, but thank you so much, Brady, for that presentation. That was quite wonderful. So the first question is coming from Samir, and he asks, Google is going to be penalizing pop-up style tools, especially for mobile, in the new year. So any suggestions to kind of go beyond pop-ups to grab attention?
Yeah, it's a good point, and it's another good point of how Google can change their policies, and then your strategies may also be flawed. So one, you can easily turn off pop-ups on mobile and then still have them show up on desktop, and then your strategy is still relevant. The pop-up is just the action component, right? So the goal is still, what are people searching for, and what is our landing page about? If that doesn't exist, then no one's ever going to be on your page long enough to even see your pop-up. So that's the first thing, is that quality and that click-through rate. Those things are really, really important. And then the other thing is, I'd say, if you don't want to use a pop-up, then look at website architecture and look where your email sign-up is, and find ways to make it more prevalent. So if it's buried in the footer, very few people are going to find it. So can you put the call to action, like sign this petition, or you want more information on this subject, sign up for email. There's ways to do email sign-ups without using pop-ups. They just can be a little bit more involved in terms of website architecture.
Right, and you're saying that just, regardless of what technique you use to sort of make that call to action, the quality of your site is going to be, comes number one.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Great. Now we have a question from Allison, and she asks, an informal poll in our office says that most of us ignore the ads on Google search and actually just skip down to the list to organic hits. Do you have any comments on that?
No. I think a lot of people do that. I know I do that all the time for charities because I don't want to, cost them any money. But in that case, what's the downside of having your ad show up, right? So we're not saying that a pay-per-click strategy is the only way to go or even the best way to go. We're just saying it's one of the two parts of search marketing, and if you don't do it at all, there's a big opportunity that's being lost. And because Google has this ad grant, it costs little to actually participate. So if you don't do that, that's fine. If 1 out of every 3 people don't do that, but then what about the other 2? So again, it's like most things, it's not like this is the only strategy, right? It's about being more holistic and a more well-rounded strategy. And when it comes to search, paid is absolutely one of those prongs that should be a part of the SEO and organic side of things.
Absolutely, and I think with any form of marketing, there are going to be people who find out a way to sort of ignore it, but there's still going to be traction with others. And the next question now comes from Grace, and she asks, how often do you change your goals for your Google AdWords campaigns?
Yeah, so goals is a tricky word because there's goals, aspirational, strategic, and then there's actually goals like within analytics. But our goals aspirationally typically are there for like 6 and 12 months. The one thing to consider on AdWords, and we run into this all the time, it's not the best strategy for short-term results, right? So if someone, we had a client who wants to sell a bunch of tickets to their event next week, and there's not a, AdWords isn't necessarily the best way to do that because it's based on like algorithms and engagement, and so it's more about over time. In that scenario, a paid advertising strategy through AdWords or something like Facebook is better. So where AdWords has a lot of value for us are those like branded campaigns, those calls to action that will kind of exist throughout the whole year, so volunteers and donations, things like that. So we don't change those up too often at all. A lot of the hard work is done in the setting up, and then you kind of tweak and optimize. So we'll only do big changes kind of every 6 months. Again, caveat being we're focused on that 80-20 principle in smaller to medium-sized organizations. We have a couple bigger clients where we're in there every single week, and we're really involved, but for the most part, you don't need to make major changes more than once a quarter or twice a year, I don't think.
Gotcha. The next question is from Isaac, and this question is about setting up the landing page, and he asks, is there an option to change the landing page depending on your specific campaign?
Yes. So the landing page is actually tied to the ad. So you can have a few different ads point to different landing pages. So for example, you could run one campaign that, say, is focused on content. You could have an ad group that is, say, focused on stories in Vancouver, but then you could have an ad talking about, say, if it's environmental, talking about saving the fishes, and they can go to this landing page. But you could have a different ad that's talking about saving the bears, go to this landing page. So the landing page is tied to the ad as opposed to the campaign.
Gotcha. Beautiful. And the next one is from John, and he asks, do you recommend any resources for learning more on linking e-commerce to AdWords?
Yeah, good question. I've found Google's own documentation and support to be the best in that case. They'll have two support forums. One of them is kind of for dummies like me, where it's like normal support, and then they also have their developer support section, which is for nerds and developers who know a lot more. And so depending on where you're at, one of those two search forums are kind of best. But there is one of the things that I underestimated is how important, say, e-commerce tracking can be when you get into more of that optimization marketing, because without it or something like it, you actually don't know where donations are coming from. So it's hard to evaluate paid advertising strategies or even content marketing strategies because you're kind of flying a little blind. So particularly if you do paid advertising, you need something like that to know the return on investment, which is really key.
Definitely. And I think just Googling how to link e-commerce to Google AdWords, even something like that would get you started.
Yeah, and the e-commerce to AdWords is actually is dead simple. It's integrating the e-commerce into analytics or getting it into your site, which is the hard part.
Gotcha. So there's that extra step. And the next question from Alex. He asks, do you know if Google will be activating the AdWords Grant Pro program again?
I don't know for sure, but I would assume that they will. My guess is that the program is gaining more energy and momentum, and they're just trying to restrict how many people they give those $40,000 grants with. So they may make it harder to get, and they may make more strict requirements to get it. But while I don't know, I'm pretty sure that some form of it will come back at some point.
Beautiful. And the next question comes from Jackie, and she asks, for Google Grants Pro, she says that the minimum spend is $9,900 USD per month, and she asks, is that from the $10,000 per month from the ad grant, or is it in addition to that?
No, it's from the ad grant. So they're basically saying you need to spend 99% of that $10,000 in at least 2 of the past 6 months. Because their bidding system works, you can actually spend over $10,000. They kind of have a 20% buffer on a bid or a day. So there may be some months where you actually spend over $10,000, but the point is that that's just on the Google Ad Grant. You don't need to spend any extra money. It's just they're trying to reward you if you're doing a good job, like click-through rate over 1, and you're getting a lot of traffic and really using the grant. Then again, when the program comes back, they want to let you do more.
Great, great. The next question is from Lindsay, and she asks, our donation page is hosted by a different URL than our site, and Google AdWords will not link to it. Is there a way to get it approved?
Potentially. There is a way to submit a request for an additional domain, but that probably won't work in the case of donations. So third-party processing of donations, so you click here and you go out to a different site, or on emails, like if you say sign up for email and you click and then say you go to the hosted MailChimp form, basically anytime people leave your site, the tracking and coordination gets really, really hard. And so the more that things can stay on your site with embedded forms is best. Next case, if you can have a completion page or a thank you page that bring people back. So if they click donate, they go to some other form, they complete their donation, they come back to your site. That's useful for tracking purposes. But in terms of pointing ads to a page, it has to be on your domain, or in those rare exceptions where you can get an additional domain request. Like we had that, we were able to get it for a client where they had their main site, but then they've really kind of rebranded and had a second site, and we kind of made the case and got it. So it's more about a domain as opposed to like a specific donate page. You could try. I just don't know if that would be successful. So in that case, even if the transaction takes place on a third-party page, we'd suggest having a donate page that's pretty friendly, right? Because people will be coming from search who may not know you. So making the case a bit more than a transaction donate page, which is basically, choose your amount and complete. That's probably a worthwhile page to have regardless. And then if it's on your site, then you can point ads there as well.
Nice, yeah. And the next question is from, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, is from Mosine. And she asks, what is the impact of content on Facebook and other social media versus having a solid landing page?
What is the impact of content on social media sites?
Mm-hmm.
Like for SEO strategy?
Yeah, I believe that's what she's asking.
Yeah, so it's a good question. I don't know if I actually have a real good and direct answer. Like SEO is pretty complex in terms of how things are weighted, and it's not even, I'm not an SEO expert. I'm a fundraising guy who's learned a lot about AdWords. So A, I don't know. B, what I do know is that Google is ranking more and more social pages and social interactions in terms of scoring for their pages. So, if you've got a page that is being shared more or commented more or liked more, Google responds to that, especially Google+. They really like that. And that'll help increase the chances of your page showing up in search without the pay-per-click. And now the more that the landing page obviously ties into the content and is relevant to people, then the better. And if the landing page sucks, they're not going to share it anyways. So those things are interwoven, and I do think that's another key insight in terms of working with small and medium-sized organizations is the landing page is often the thing that's most crippling. We'll have a really long kind of catch-all landing page or something that has only video but no text content, which isn't great for search or ads, or it'll be very kind of focused on, if you already know the organization inside and out, then it's a good page, but if you're brand new, it's not a very good page. So there's a lot, I think, on landing pages that can and probably should be done to, again, really make the most out of an organic or paid search marketing strategy.
Definitely. And you know what, Brady, we have a few more questions, but we've run out of time, unfortunately. So that's all we have for today. But I do want to thank you so much for taking the time to teach us about the Google Ad Grant. And I'd like to thank everyone for attending today and taking some time out of your lunch hour to join us. And I want to give one really important reminder that the webinar recording will be posted on our website and our YouTube channel by the end of the day. Also, when you end this session, there's going to be a brief post-webinar survey, and it's going to give you an opportunity to follow up with either TechSoup Canada or Brady. If you do have additional questions, please fill out that survey, and you can start a conversation with Brady over email to sort out any loose ends that we weren't able to get to during the presentation. And that's it. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.